Whoa! Oh!
We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
If you're not already a subscriber to Ready Set Drone, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because we do a lot of stuff with TinyHawks, EMAX products, DJI products, toy drones, all kinds of fun drone stuff and RC stuff, and you'll love it if you subscribe. So this right here is the TinyHawk 3. The original TinyHawk came out several years back and was the first kind of official, big, mass-produced Tiny Whoop style drone. Now a Tiny Whoop typically is a little drone that you mostly fly indoors, has ducted propellers, can be line of sight, can be FPV, but I think that EMAX was one of the first ones to mass produce a FPV analog Tiny Whoop style drone. It has a little 1S battery that comes with it. It's 450 milliamp hour 1S battery. Uses some little rubber bands to connect on the bottom, which I really like these rubber bands because it makes it really easy to put the battery in and out and to get a good center of gravity on it. It uses the JST connector, does have a capacitor in there to help you kind of manage the voltage flow and not have as much sag from your battery. Has 4 little 4-blade props, prop guards, and the camera on top is an upgraded camera. It has a variable transmitter, so you can actually bump up the amount of gain on the transmitter, the VTX, so that you can actually see better in the goggles. But what's really cool about this is this comes in an entire ready-to-fly kit, RTF kit. Has a nice case with the EMAX logo on the outside. I really like this color. Kind of reminds me of like a bowling ball case or something like that. Remote control that feels good in the hand, doesn't feel like quite as much of a cheapy remote as some of the ready-to-fly kits come with. Now, this isn't going to be the best remote in the world, but it certainly is an upgrade from some other ready-to-fly kits I've seen. And probably the weakest spot is always ready-to-fly kit goggles, and these aren't too bad. We have found that these don't get you the range, even with the antennas on them, you know, and fully dialed in. You don't get the range that you're going to get with Fat Sharks and some better antennas, a patch antenna, maybe a custom-built antenna, etc. But these have a few features that are pretty cool. One of the things I really like about these goggles is they labeled the buttons. So many FPV goggles don't actually label the buttons, so you're not sure what stuff does until you've used it 100 times. But you have record, channel, and band on this side, so channel and band, so you can actually switch between the different transmission channels, and record, of course, to record in the built-in DVR. And on the other side, it has the power button, which also says M for menu, so when it's on, you can actually get into the menu system. And then A is for searching automatically through all the channels. It'll just run through them all until it finds something transmitting. And then, of course, your micro SD slot right here. Important note on the micro SD, you have to format your card in FAT32 or it won't recognize it. So if you have an exFAT card or some other format of card, go to your PC, format it in FAT32, and then you should be good to go. Even if you format it in these goggles, that won't change it to FAT32. You have to pre-format it in FAT32 so it'll work here. Got your antennas that screw into the top. You've got your diopter here that slides in and out. The thing cuts down to a fairly small size when you, whoa, oh. Didn't know that could happen. And there's the actual screen, so you can see what the goggles are seeing. So basically these goggles are just a kind of diopter that give you a magnified view of this screen over here. So yeah, and you know what? There's a film on it that will take off. And that might even improve the visibility of it a little bit. All right, we'll put it back in. You know what? That feels like it's magnetic. That's pretty cool. Feel that, or listen to that. They pop in, and then you just pull on them a little bit to pull out. There's definitely a magnetic point there where it actually goes in. I did not know that until this very moment, and that is really cool because If you want to pull this out and let someone else watch what's going on, or fly FPV but without the goggles, you can do it very easily with these right here. So pop those in, and then as I was saying before, the actual lenses are adjustable to 3 different settings that allows you to basically adjust them for your eyes. Now, they're not going to be for someone who has really bad eyesight and requires glasses. You may have to wear your glasses under these, or try to anyway, but they are going to help. I know for me, pulling them all the way out like this makes it easier to see the screen. You've got 4 spare propellers. These are actually rotors. Propellers push, rotors lift, but everybody calls them props. They're the Avon props / rotors. So it comes with 8 of them. Comes with EMAX stickers, a support manual. If you want to get to the manual, you would scan this QR code. Somebody earlier was griping that there was no manual, and so I think you have to scan this QR. Did you scan it? So if you need support or a manual, you can scan the QR code to get to that. EMAX stickers, everybody needs some of those. And then the disclaimer card with all the stuff, you know, you could kill somebody with this, not really. All right, and then in this little container right here, a couple of goodies. First of all, there is a charger. Now this is actually one of the coolest chargers I've ever seen EMAX put out. And the reason is it's not just an open circuit board like so many of their chargers are. Their older chargers were just circuit boards with everything. It was kind of cool because you could see what was going on. But this one's got a nice plastic housing, and it's got switches here, so you can switch from just standard LiPo or HV for high voltage. It's got little LEDs built into it, so you can actually see if your quad battery is charged. And it looks like this will support both a 1S and a 2S battery, so with different size connectors. So that's very cool. It's USB, which I love USB chargers because you don't have to worry about what country you're in. Do you have the right cable? Is it the right voltage? No, it's just going to work when you plug it in. Of course, the USB-A to micro USB, I wish everybody would just get on board with using USB-C, but I understand there's a fee associated with that, so to keep costs down, they're using micro USB. But yeah, if you're going to charge this cord's going to work, so you plug it in, plug this into the wall, and you'll be able to charge it. And then in this little baggie are some spare screws, 2 spare rubber bands, which are the ones that hold the battery in place, a little tiny screwdriver, and a large screw that is probably the one. So the really important question is, how does it fly? If you've never flown a TinyHawk before, then you're gonna be in for a pleasant surprise, I think. And if you have flown a TinyHawk, I've flown it and it flies a lot like the TinyHawk 2. Now, of course, they've made some improvements on it. Number one is they have made the camera tilt have more friction, and you can really feel it here. When I used to fly the TinyHawk 2, and I did fly that quite a bit when I was starting in FPV, anytime you would hit the ceiling, the camera would automatically tilt down because there wasn't any friction. It would just kind of go boom, and then it was hard to fly because it was facing down and you were looking at the ground. This one has more friction built into it. I actually hit the ceiling here in my office just about 30 minutes ago, and it stayed where it was. So that's great, that's a big improvement. And then number 2, with the TinyHawk 2, you could fly in a 2S battery. You had to change a couple of settings in Betaflight and do some things to it to make it work on a 2S. They have scrapped that and really focused on better performance with a 1S because most people flew with a 1S anyway. I only flew with a 2S on the TinyHawk 2 a few times, and it was just kind of a hassle. I have a lot more 1S batteries anyway, so I flew 1S and I'm flying indoors, so I don't need to really rip. So that is another big change on the actual quad. And then as far as the remote goes, they've actually really improved these gimbals in the controller. You can hear that, you can feel it. They're more hobby grade gimbals than a toy grade. You know, when you get one of these toy drones, a lot of times these feel really loose and weak and they don't really pop back like that. These are nice in terms of the tension. The actual remote controller itself feels pretty good. Like it's a nice kind of material that is grippy, doesn't feel like a slick plastic. The switches feel pretty good. You know, they feel like they're gonna last, they're not gonna break. And then finally, they have added this little slot in the top. You can pull this rubber piece off, and then you can actually pull out the screen from the goggles. So the screen is magnetic and it just pops right out. And then it came with this accessory to allow you to put this in here. So it's like a GoPro accessory, and then put this piece, which is also kind of like a GoPro accessory, and then put this piece on. Again, if you're familiar with GoPro or other action cameras, these are pretty standard connectors. And so now I had this little bit on. I suppose you could just leave this all assembled like this and then just slide it in if you wanted to do this, you know, kind of keep it as a assembly. And then you can take this screen, which has thread on the bottom, and then connect it. So now we have a setup where you can fly FPV using the screen and not have to wear the goggles, which is pretty cool. I prefer the goggles. It's more immersive and you can see a lot better that way. But for this, well, let's just take it off like this and see how it does. See how it is to fly it with this setup. Now, we have observed a couple of times when you set it down here on the table that if it's sitting at a weird angle, sometimes when you arm it, the props will actually hit the table. So be aware of that. I'd say that's probably a bug, not a feature. You can always fix it by kind of tilting a little bit. Let's see if the props hit the table when I arm it here. And currently I'm in air mode. I'd rather be in angle mode for indoors, or at least horizon. And we'll arm. Oh, it won't arm because my throttle is up. If you're a new flyer and you don't know that, you have to pull your throttle all the way down before it'll arm. If you can't get it to arm, you're like, what's going on? So there we go. I'm kind of flying semi line of sight, and I've got it in horizon right now, so it's stabilizing itself. But it's also drifting a little left, so I'm gonna see if I can use the trim switch to fix that drift. I could also, there we go. It looks like my battery may not be centered exactly, but that's pretty good. That's pretty dialed in. So that's one thing you want to do too with these, is you want to see if you can get them to hover in one spot without drifting before you fly around too much, because then you're not fighting that drift. One other thing to note with this guy, is that the rates on it are pretty docile. So it's not set up for a lot of flips and fast motion right out of the gate. You can change all that in beta flight. If you want to go in and change the rates, you can definitely do it, but this is more set up for a beginner. So if you're an expert and you feel like it's not moving as quickly as you can, go in and change the rates and you can adjust that. A few other things that Chris noticed when he was flying. Again, he flew it first and he was at 25 milliwatts and really was getting bad reception. You can go into the menu and change it to 200 milliwatts, and that improves it greatly. And the other thing you can do, honestly, to get even better reception is use a better set of goggles and antennas. The one it comes with is okay for indoors and tight spaces, close proximity, not flying it too far away. But if you're gonna be flying beyond trees, beyond a fence, beyond any sort of barrier that's gonna get in the way, you probably are gonna wanna use a different set of goggles and make sure you're at 200 milliwatts for the transmitter. Another quirky thing about the screen here, which is what goes in the goggles, is that you can plug it in and charge it, and it has a red light on it when it's charging that will be red as it's charging. It turns green to tell you it's done charging. After you've charged it for a few hours, you'll turn it on and you'll see 3 bars, and it'll go for a while, and then it'll drop down to 2 bars, and then it'll go for a while, drop down to 1 bar, and then it goes for a long time on 1 bar before it actually dies. So the battery indicator on this is not the most accurate in the world. You have to just kind of like remember how long you've flown for. And I'd say just anytime you're gonna go fly, just give it a full charge so that you have a full charge before you start. One other note about the actual DVR in here, in addition to making sure that your card is formatted FAT32, When you press the record button, there will be a little red dot that appears right in the top center. That red dot does not mean you're recording until it starts blinking, and it doesn't start blinking for about 20 seconds. So you're gonna wanna make sure to wait, if you wanna capture your entire flight, wait for 20 seconds before you actually arm it. Okay, it just started blinking from the moment I pressed record. So let me see if I can fly it here inside. There we go. It's very dark in here. And actually it's doing okay in the darkness. Where it struggles, I think, is when it goes from light to dark or dark to light. It doesn't do well between those contrasty scenes. But I'm flying back behind Chris. I'm flying back over here in the side of the studio that's dark, and it's doing okay. Obviously the most light is right in this area and it's easiest to see, and probably the picture is the best. But you know, if you're just trying to learn how to fly FPV, or you're getting ready for the winter and you're like, okay, I need something I can fly indoors. If you have a good sized room like this, a game room or a rec room or a basement or something, this isn't a bad little option for flying around. I mean, I just hit myself in the leg and it did not hurt at all. You know, you're not gonna hurt anybody flying this way, and it's a good way to learn. Anyway, I'm DVRing all this, I think. Oh, one other note that Chris pointed out, by default, there is a time limit on the recording of 3 minutes. You can go into the menu and change that. That time limit it'll stop recording after 3 minutes and start a new file, and you'll miss a few seconds of it. And so you really want to make sure that you go in and change that to 5 or 10 minutes if you possibly can. But as you can see, I mean, even in this fairly dark environment, I've got pretty good control. Oh, until I say so, and then I don't anymore. You know, I'm able to go through some pretty tight little gaps and just have some fun flying, getting better at it, and learning how to become a better FPV pilot. And that's kind of what TinyHawks are all about. So if you're a new FPV pilot and you're looking for something to start with, the TinyHawks have always been a great choice, and I really feel like the 1S optimization they've done on this one to make it fly better with the 1S is really great, because the 2S is a lot of power for indoors, quite honestly, even though it doesn't sound like it. It's easy to get away from you. Some of the other quads, like the racing quad, their TinyHawk 2 Race and the Freestyle, those are also too much to fly indoors, in my opinion. This little 1S is just for cruising around like you just saw me doing, going under things, between gaps, under tables, you know, chasing your dog around the house, all that kind of fun stuff. It's not gonna hurt anybody with these ducted propellers. You can bump into stuff, and they've made those improvements that we noticed in the TinyHawk 2 with making the camera stay a little bit better in position, making it easier to get to things within the body, and of course improving the flight on the 1S battery. I don't know if this capacitor has anything to do with that and helping to keep the voltage a little more regulated so that you get a smoother throttle, but all of those things seem to really help. I recommend this kit for beginners. I recommend this kit for experts as well. I had a lot of fun just flying around in here. Now I'm gonna be honest, I am pretty spoiled because I love digital and I'm so used to a digital signal, but even with the kit goggles, the kit remote, and everything straight out of the box, it's great in here. And there's so many things I can poke around and fly under. It's fun, and it's something that if you get 2 of them and you can fly with your friends, that's even better, because why? We don't fly alone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a comment below, smash that like button, and we'll see you next time on Ready, Set, Drone. Thanks for watching.